Hello and welcome to the On the Whistle podcast. My name is Alistair Howarth, and today on our preview series, we are looking at the Gambia national team, the Scorpions. They came into 2021 as the darlings of the tournament, the lowest ranked side ever in Africa Cup of Nations history, and they made it all the way to the quarterfinals. This year, can they do better? Can they go one further? They're in a tough group, and here to dissect that group and their chances with us is Gambian journalist Buba Jallow Fallaboweh. Enjoy. Today, we're having a look at one of the most interesting and fascinating teams on the continent. They rose from pretty much nowhere, complete obscurity. I think at one point they went 5 years without a victory in FIFA competition. And yet they made it all the way to the quarterfinals of the last AFCON in Cameroon. I'm, of course, talking about the brilliant and exciting Gambia team. Gambia, who were the story of the tournament at the last AFCON, I would say alongside the Comoros, but have qualified yet again, are back in the tournament in 2023. And here to talk everything Gambia through with me is Buba Jallow Fallaboweh. Buba, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing, brother?
Yeah, I'm doing fine, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, Buba, it's great to have you because Gambia is one of these teams. When we talk about AFCON, all the stories focus on, the big teams, your Senegals, your Moroccos, your Nigerias. But this is, for me, where the AFCON is such a rich tournament, is kind of the smaller teams that have developed, have pushed through, and we've seen the successes of those, Cabo Verde, Equatorial Guinea, Comoros. But I think Gambia were definitely the most exciting, obviously making it to the quarterfinals of the last tournament, losing out to host Cameroon in the end. And not just, surviving against smaller teams, but knocking out Mali, Guinea, beating Tunisia, proper big giants of the African game. And I want to hear from you. They were the lowest ranked team to ever come to an AFCON. As I alluded to earlier, I think they went 5 years without winning a competitive match before Tom Saintfiet took over. This is a team that was, banned for 2 years, I think between 2014 and 2016. And yet now they're considered a team that is, qualified for back-to-back AFCON. How has this happened? What is the story of the Gambia? How have they come from nowhere to being, one of the better sides on the continent?
Well, I think football has decentralized a lot in Africa because Nigeria, Ghana, Cameroon, and of recent Egypt have dominated African football for quite a long time. And it's a similar case to South Africa. So the most driving factor in this case is the players themselves. They have been watching African Cup of Nations. They have been watching World Cup, and they wanted to be part of this Cinderella story. So I think that was enough motivation because we all grew up. I grew up putting a lot of posters in my house. Rajabet Song, Patrick Mboma, supporting the great teams of Cameroon in the 2000, Nigeria, and even we supported Senegal because we were close neighbors to them when they were in the World Cup, in the African Cup of Nations. So it's a quite motivation for these young players growing up in the academies, growing up in these clubs, wearing this, calling themselves like Patrick Mboma, calling themselves like Eto, or even these European names. I think it was an inspiration for them to finally get this time and remind the world that, and it is done with limited support. It is done with limited resources. So if that support, if that resources are combined with experience, because we lost to Cameroon because of we were not experienced. Because to reach at that stage or to proceed from that stage, you need an experienced coach, you need experienced players that will not be affected in that crowd that was in Japona for the quarterfinals. But I think I think with the support, because it's disheartening that the Gambia haven't played at home in the Bakaw Independence Day for the longest time, and I think it takes a toll on the physical, on the psychology of the players, because despite them not used to playing at home because of the fans' pressure, but it should be rewarding for them, especially when they came from Cameroon to have to have that celebration with them. But I think what is coming next is even bigger than the history in Cameroon. In Ivory Coast, it will be difficult, but we have young players, the likes of Alma Bojang, Mahmoud Bajo, the Okron under 20, that went toe and nail against Senegal in Egypt, and that went to the round of 16. So now also we have been counted not a giant in Africa, but we can always think because before Senegal or Ghana, Nigeria dominated the African football, the minors don't have that lot of the minors were not highlighted so much compared to now.
And kind of looking at that, you mentioned that the under 20 AFCON. We obviously had the under 20 AFCON earlier this year, which Senegal kind of unsurprisingly won. You know, they're the strongest, you know, arguably the strongest team from, you know, the youth categories all the way up to the senior team. But you guys, like you said, got to the final. I think you as well. You got bronze in the U20 AFCON in 2021 ahead of last AFCON. You know, where is this young crop of amazingly talented players coming from? Is that through the development that is, you know, like you said, there's so little resources? Is it the type of thing where there's just an amazing talent pool, or where are these players actually kind of coming from? Because, you know, we don't have a super strong league in the Gambia. We don't have the infrastructure. You know, like you said, you know, they're one of the countries, like many in Africa, who can't actually play their home games, their competitive games at home anymore because of CAF's new stricter regulation. So how have they been able to develop, you know, continually over the last few years, an incredibly exciting young group of players?
Yeah, uh, I think we have to give credit to the academies, to the football clubs, the likes of Real de Banjul and the famous academies around the Greater Banjul or around the country, and the local coaches. They are also limited in resources, in infrastructures, and everything, even in the capacity, because those are not the coaches that have these biggest lands across in Africa. But remind you, a, a, a natural Gambian footballer is talented. A natural a natural Gambian footballer is talented. If you go back to Sevilla, they still have the banner of Biri Biri, and that played long for. He passed away maybe 4 years ago, and they still have his banner there, and they still sing his song during the match days. When you come to Sweden, Djurgården, they have the great Padembo Touré. When you go to Casa Sport, Senegal, you have the song of Lamin Jaju. And these Gambians, when they go out, they dominate in those leagues. You know, most of the players like Jato Sise, they dominated the league. When even Steve moved to China, among the first Africans to move to China, he was making a headline for himself. He dominated the China's league. So then they start. So they start to take a look at where who are these players. You know, we have the talent, but tactically and technically we were not there. We were still raw. But the emergence of Steve, the emergence of Musa Barrow, like I mentioned earlier, Real the Banjul, Hawks, and all these countries, they contributed to the success of these players that we are seeing now. And there are even some players that didn't even play first division and second division, and they managed to go to Europe. So now we have a huge presence in Europe compared to compared to the last 10 years. And if you go back to the summer transfer that has concluded here, I think we have almost 90 players that have moved, that are Gambian players that have moved. Maybe they have not hit the ground and start running, but in the near future, there will be a lot of positive. And remind you, the greatest talent that we are having right now, if he is not even the greatest talent, that is Yankuba Minte, that went from AC Hoskins. He signed for Newcastle and now he's in Feyenoord. And like there are so many caliber players of Yankuba Minte, and he's just 19 years old. So I think we have arrived. We have struggled, as you have said. We have been banned for 2 years. We haven't win against Central Africa, against Congo. We haven't, so we still building our team. But as I said earlier, what what we are expecting as a journalist, as a fans, is far bigger than what we have seen so far.
Mm. Yeah, and I think you put it really well. Like expectations are so much higher.
Yeah, and remind you, yesterday, Adama Bojang made his debut at the age of 19 years, 182 days, like taking a player from the Gambia. So like if you look at the connection between Mets and Generals on the foot, they are already integrated. They're speaking the language. But I have been telling people that like Adama will have his time, especially with the international break, because this is the time where coaches put you to more on your on your pace and to give you all the technicalities that they have there. And like as I said, this is just the beginning. If you look at Ablai Jallow, apply Jallow of Mets, or even the time we had a great presence of Gambians in the Serie A when it was Musa Barrow, Ibrahim Koli, Musa Juara, Ibrahim Dabo, and all those kids were given their debuts when they were with these Italian giants, and they played a great number of games. I think Musa Barrow almost played for 100 games in the Serie A, and it's a huge achievement for a player of his caliber, a player of his age. So I think, in turn, he's also a great inspiration. If where he's coming from, or the club he's coming from, they are seeing that Musa Barrow went up to the state to play to play in the Serie A. A lot of kids will be still dreaming that they can also play there.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because we're seeing this unbelievable amount of talent. Adama Bojang had a brilliant, under 20 AFCON, and he's not even getting into the team yet. It looks like it's exciting for the next decade, not just the next few years. But you say you've said that the players have the talent, but they're lacking the technical and tactical kind of side of the games. How important has the head coach Tom Saintfiet been to developing that side and bringing the Gambia into kind of the eyes of the world in terms of football, taking them from a group of, potentially talented players who playing all over the world. I think at the last AFCON, you had players playing in 17 different countries, to being this coherent team that has a good structure, plays, fairly good football, and, was able to make it to the quarterfinals. How important has he been to the story of the Gambia?
Yeah, I think it will be a class of pattern, because the national team does not play similar to what the under 20 plays. We have two different coaches in the under 20s, that is Matan Buch and Lai Abdullahi Bojang, and both these two coaches play different system compared to what Tom Saintfiet plays, or even the coach of the under 23, that is Abdu Jamme, that currently resides in Finland. So I think it's a class of pattern, because that's what we want. We want the same identity. What the national teams plays, it filters down to the under 17 or our under 15, but that is not the case. So Tom Saintfiet is working with experienced players, players that are determined, players that listen to his instruction. And I think one of his strongest character is that, like, to give them that confidence, that you can beat anybody, and that is the kind of the confidence that we will be looking ahead when we arrive in Ivory Coast, because we'll be playing a derby, and we'll be playing a very fierce match against Mali, because or Guinea, they still have that revenge in their mind. So I think he doesn't have much to do with the younger teams. He has been there to watch their games, to support them, but he has a different way of how to play and how to win compared to the under 20, because one of the most favorable results was when we beat Nigeria. We have been struggling to beat Nigeria in the under 20s, but the last time we beat them, I think 1-0, we beat Nigeria, and like, just to come back uh, to 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 uh, to close the chapter of Ghana and Nigeria dominance in the under 20s, in the under 17. I think that was a great work. And to be honest, they play beautiful football. But here with the national team, we are a bit cautious. We defend our goal. We defend deep. We hit players. We hit teams or countries on the counter attack, which can be sometimes very tiring. Which can be sometimes very boring, and which sometimes can be easily interpreted by other coaches or other technicians.
Yeah, and you talk about the tactical style. I think what stuck with me from the last AFCON was two or three things. Was Gambia was incredibly organized. I think you only conceded one goal before the Cameroon game, in which you conceded two. So in those first four games, you kept three clean sheets. But from what I saw at the AFCON, actually, it wasn't a team that was breaking really fast in a lot of other kind of teams that were playing for some of these smaller teams. But actually, there was quite a lot of build up. I think back to that goal you scored against Guinea in the 1-0 win in the round of 16. But I think there's like 17 passes in the build up to that. So for me, the Gambia was such this kind of strange, concept where most teams who defend deep, they want to hit on the break. But actually, and you did play like that. But when you needed to, you were able to keep possession and able to play it up the pitch. But then the other thing that struck me was just how good the goals were. Gambia, you guys won those games with a ludicrously small xG because especially Buba Jallow, he was just striking them in from the edge of the box. It was beautiful to see. But I want to look at how do you say that how do you see that AFCON performance and result impacting the country and impacting the development of football? Like, how is Gambia going to turn from a tiny country that has very little football pedigree, hadn't been to an AFCON before? How do you turn that from just being a one-off success to being a sustained period of actually developing into like a properly successful football nation? And what does that look like? What does success look like?
Yeah, so many people can claim credit. So many people can claim the credit, but because of the limited resources that we are having, we cannot move to the next stage compared to Mauritania. Sometimes you need a visionary leader, because we know the money that FIFA is pumping into these countries. But most of these countries that are doing better off, look at your own country, Kenya. They were banned because of the government interference. Look at Zimbabwe. They were banned. Look at Uganda. They were struggling. Rwanda is coming, but they're still struggling. Tanzania is coming. They're still so. Even Nigeria, when they failed to reach the African Cup of Nations, when they failed to reach the World Cup, the scandal of Ghana in 2014, and they are struggling from the last African Cup of Nations. So every country has its own problem, but we are not finding solution for the problems, and we are not growing. There are some few individuals that are making names for themselves, that are having the profit, but still now we are struggling with infrastructures. We have struggled with parks across the country to have this division one and division two matches, especially the female matches. So when you will look at that, they have nominated Tom Senfit as the coach of the year for the CAF award, the Gambia as the team of the year. But when you come back to the reality, the reality are the referees that are playing these games, are they paid? Because most of these referees now they just within WAF level. When shall we have referee for the CAF? When shall we have referee? When shall we have FIFA referees that will be, because for the longest time, Papa Gassama have been carrying our name and have been carrying our image. When you hear Gambia, you watch that match, you look at, oh, this is one of the best referees in the world. Then the next section is that he's a Gambia, so he has been carrying that image of Gambia. But when the under 20 came, started from the WAFU and back to back, because we qualified for the in the World Cup that was supposed to play in Indonesia because of the COVID came. So because we took third, we beat Tunisia in the third round, and then we repeated the same that we reached the final in the next the last edition that was played in Egypt. But like the beautiful image and the expectation that people see is far from the reality that is in the ground, and I think is hampering our growth, because one of the success that you can attribute to is that, like, when we had those performances, like we were expecting players like Isfa Bob, he's currently without a club and he definitely is fading away from the national team. Like, one of the success should have been those players getting contract, getting bigger contracts, attracting agents to come and see the Gambia. But the agents are still coming, but they are still coming with the few, with one or two links and connection they built over the 5 years. So, like, the beautiful story, it's not what is going with the reality in the country, because we even struggle to return back home after the Cameroon game. We spent in Cameroon 2 days to return back, and those are stories that have been read and that have been analyzed across the continent and across. So you will see that the performance that we had was overshadowed because how we behaved when the players or the team could not return in time. They were stranded. So that negative story become the talking point, and the reality that, like, that that fever that you should feel out, like Gambia is. Mind you, there was a massive celebration from the first game to the second game to the third game, because we were divided by politics, just like in Kenya, we were divided by politics. So the only time we come and put the nation together is when the national team is playing, and when the under 20 is playing. But like we haven't reached that success. That's why I believe we deserve to be named the team of the year. Although Morocco stand a great chance to win it at Senegal, we deserve Tom Senfield deserve to win the coach of the year because of what he is working with, the materials that he is working with the limited resources, the limited access, and the limited funds. Make it very incredible story for the Gambia. Hadn't been we have those limited resources and fund, I think we could have been far away because football is fueled by money and passion.
And you know, if you're watching this and listening to this, and you want to hear more about, particularly Tom Samphiet, you know, we did a big 2-part interview with him last year. So please go back and find that either on our YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts on Acast and Spotify, etc. But I want to then now look. I mean, after all, we're previewing the AFCON, but we've been talking a lot about Gambia's past, but we want to talk about the future as well. You are in the group of death. There's no getting away with that. You know, this in my opinion is the most difficult group at this tournament. You've got holders Senegal, you've got Cameroon who got to the semifinals or at the World Cup, and then you've got Guinea. And Guinea again are one of these teams that I think of them similar to Burkina Faso. They always have quality players. We always hope that they'll be kind of dark horses, and they never quite reach it. And then you've got Gambia, like you said, that's a derby against Senegal. You know, you're playing the team that knocked you out against in the last AFCON, and you're playing the team you knocked out in the round of 16 in Guinea in the last AFCON, and you will definitely be viewed as the team that, despite you know having that brilliant performance in the last AFCON, you'll still be seen as the fourth team. And you know, to give some sense to that is that despite being the only team that pre-qualified for the AFCON qualifiers back in 2021, Gambia were also the only team that is now at this AFCON that had to pre-qualify. That's how lowly ranked they were coming into the last AFCON, that despite that performance, they still had to pre-qualify again. And of course, now Senegal, Cameroon, Guinea, they know what to expect. You know, Gambia is not going to be a surprise. You're not going to be underestimated by these teams. So how do you see the team performing against these kind of larger nations? Because we've seen that since the AFCON last year, you've had some really good performances against big sides like Mali, again, beating them and losing to them. But then also, you know, in this previous international window, you know, an away loss against Burundi and a loss to the Ivory Coast. And obviously Ivory Coast are one of the favorites. And, you know, you saw that, but that Burundi game was, you know, uncharacteristically very sloppy from the national team in terms of the defense. You know, some of the goals that were conceded off set pieces, you know, lofted crosses. So how is Tom Samphiet, how is the team going to approach this next AFCON where every single game is going to be against a huge team?
Yes, I think I have to borrow Thompson with one of his phrases that like the other teams they have more press than the Gambia. Like we have nothing to lose. But as I said earlier, I think the players have their eyes set on the bigger prize. Uh, you did mention of Burundi's match, and I think it's a worry as a fan or a journalist when you look at the Burundi match and looking for what awaits us is a big concern. We don't have the resources to play two more test matches. I think there will some few days open for people to play. You understand this big nation, Cameroon, Senegal. They will manage to tap in some friendly matches, but I'm not sure we will be able to do that as a country. And I think we are just 40 something days away from the tournament. You know, so Tom has a lot of homework to do. I don't like when he stressed so much that we have missed several players. I don't like because I don't like when he says that we missed several key players, and we did miss players in those matches that you are talking about. Hadn't been had it been that we had Buba Jallow against Cameroon because Guinea targeted him. You know, I think it was tactical. Guinea, you know, targeted him and they took him out of the game with an injury. Hadn't been he was playing against Cameroon, it will be have a difference. A difference. I cannot talk the other clubs, but all his goals for Mets they have been top class goals. You know, they have been top class. Yeah. So yeah. So I think as I said to you, like these players, they wanted to face these bigger nations. As uh, Cameroon is as good as Mali because they have the quality to go far in this competition. But as a journalist, I think that if we have to move from that pot four, we have to play against these teams. We have to win against this team because if we don't play against these teams or these countries, or if we don't win against them, we will still gonna be stuck on that pot four, and it hurts a lot as a country, to be pitted on that pot four. So the only reason we can get out of pot four to pot two or pot three is to win these games, and I think is winnable. But as you said, so many coaches now have known our tactics that we sit back and we attack. We attack often when it is too late, and 95% of the Gambians want Tom Saintfiet to attack. But with the materials that we have, we decided to sit back. As I was just doing an analysis earlier on today, that Omar Colley he did score for Batista on Sunday, and that is because whenever they need a goal, his coach will allow him to go up, and he's already 4 goals in this season. He's almost equaling the goals that he scored in Finland or in Sweden or even in Belgium. So you see that like this weekend we scored 7 goals. Like this weekend we scored seven different Gambians scored goal. But when you look at the games against Burundi and Ivory Coast, the goals didn't reflect there because there were no goals because we attack when it is too late or we attack when it is impossible to do that. But for the surprises of our coach, they also well aware of that we can attack. So I think like uh, Tom, he's good in those kind of games in those time of fixtures. So I think there's no pressure. We will play all out. We were playing against Cameroon in their own country, the pressure and everything. But now we have learned our mistake, so we may attack them. But our game against Senegal is very crucial because it's the first game. That is the key to the tournament. Tom Saintfiet always say that we would like to stay in the tournament as long as it is possible. And if that is the case, we have to win at least our first game and the second game. But he has already calculated that 4 points is enough as a as the best losers. So we will stay as long as it goes.
And that first game, you're talking, you are playing Senegal, the holders, but it's not just Senegal as the holders. It's Senegal as Gambia's big brother, as Gambia's biggest rival, your local derby. I want to ask, as someone who's I've never been to Senegal or Gambia, how is there a big rivalry there? Is there kind of, when Senegal and Gambia, will it be kind of, is this a special game for the country as because playing Senegal instead of any other team? Because for those who don't know, Gambia has one neighbor, only has one border. It is Senegal. There is no other country. So is there something special to this game because of that?
Yes, it's something special, but there's an argument right now that like most of these Senegalese players uh, that are born in France and other countries, they don't know the importance of the game, or they don't know the importance of the derby. So that's also an argument that they are giving. But uh, I would like to take you back. Maybe you have covered that the last World Cup qualifiers between Ghana and Nigeria, inside Nigeria, when Ghana booked their ticket, you saw what happened. And a similar thing happened in 2003 and in 2008. And the Gambian fans have been begging on their knees just to meet Senegal. They have been, so when the draw came, it was like, wow, now they really wanted to play Senegal. And there was no other way it was happening. And it has happened in the under 20s. I think we have played 4 times, and they have shared the wins among each other. And even the under 20 final in Egypt, it was a tense final because it was Gambia and Senegal. And I think however, this current generation of the Gambian players, they are well aware of the history of the tragedies that went in 2008 and in 2003. So they are well aware of that, and maybe they would like to stand toe to toe with them because it will be a very sad day to whosoever loses that game on that particular day because of the fans are really up. It's like big brothers and big sisters. They can joke on the social media and on the radio. And Senegal have been showing that they are superior and Gambia is inferior. to them. So there have been that, all those kinds. So it's a lot at stake, and I think the Gambian players, they are aware of the situation.
Absolutely. That sounds so exciting. Buba, thank you so much. We just have our quick fire round of questions to finish off that we've been asking all our experts and all our journalists. So I don't want you to think too much in these answers. I want quick, snappy answers. But I've got a few for you. First of all, I think we've touched on this, but Gambia's best player coming into this tournament, who is it?
It remains Ablay Jallow. It remains Ablay Jallow.
Okay, and who we've obviously talked about the under-20 team, but are there any youngsters that are going to be in the tournament who are going to be in the Ivory Coast who we should keep an eye out for?
That's the wish, but I think hopefully Mahmoud Bajo can make the cut.
Mahmoud Baja. Okay, and this is the big one. How far are Gambia going to get to this tournament? I want you to make a prediction. How far are the team going to get?
We will reach the same position, that is the quarterfinals.
Okay, a quarterfinal. I love the confidence. I love it. All right, who is going to win the tournament, the 2023 AFCON?
Morocco.
Morocco. Who's going to be the top scorer?
Is either Abubakar of Cameroon or the Guinean striker that plays in Germany.
Oh, Girassi. Yeah. Okay. And final question: who is going to get the Player of the Tournament award at the AFCON?
Sadio Mane.
Sadio Mane again. All right, Buba, thank you so much. I love the insight. I cannot wait for the tournament to start. We cannot wait to produce all of this content for you listeners. And if you're interested in seeing it at all, we're doing a preview of every single country, the biggest preview in football about the Africa Cup of Nations 2023. Hit us up on social media. Hit us up on YouTube and Spotify, on the Whistle Podcast, OTW_podcast on Twitter/X as well as Instagram. Well, thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you.